This is my 2015 Dell Inspiron 7548 laptop. I got this in 2015 and I purchased it for around $600. I got it off the Dell website from a promotion, and the promotion was like $250 off all their laptops at the time. Well, I ultimately ended up paying around $500 for this because of a marketing mistake that Dell had made at the time, and I'll explain that a little further later. But this laptop was marketed towards people who wanted an ultra portable laptop that was thin and it was light and it was pretty capable of doing almost anything. I had originally purchased this for schoolwork and programming, and in that regard it was perfect. So there's some things that are very weird about this laptop since it is kind of like a MacBook Pro competitor of 2015, and I will go over those, and I will also go over what I like about this laptop and why I ultimately have this for as long as I have and why I do really like this laptop.
I want to bring attention to the design of this laptop. This was a very much competitor to the MacBook Pro, and I think they did a really good job of making it look Mac Pro-ish. It's very thin, and if you look at the bottom right there, it kind of curves upward to give it the appearance of it being thinner than it actually is. I think this is a very cool aspect of the design that Dell did, and they really pulled it off. Look at that screen. That screen looks very thin, almost like the MacBook Pro's Retina screen. Here's a closer look at the keyboard. It is chiclet style, and the keys feel really good. They have a good amount of travel. I haven't had any issue with any keys sticking, and the backlighting has stayed consistent and even. There are 3 levels of backlighting: high, low, and off. Over here on the left side of the device, starting on the very left, there is the charge port, an HDMI in, a USB 3.0 port, and a headphone jack. Here on the right side of the device, starting on the very left, there's a full-size SD card slot, another USB 3.0, a regular USB 2.0, and a Kensington lock. Here's a view of the top of the laptop. Nothing really of note here except that the stickers did not come with the device. And here's what the back of the device looks like. Things of note are the dual vents up the top there. Those are for intake vents. It has 2 large feet that prop the laptop up so it can get circulation. And those grills up front are dual firing speakers at the front. It is held on by various number of screws, and the screws you see up there are stuck in the chassis so that you won't lose them. Here's the other side of the back of the laptop. The screen is held on by a large single hinge, very similar to the MacBook Pro. Under the hinge is the exhaust vents there, which you will see in a moment. And here are those vents. This vent here is exhausting air out, and as I move to the right here, you can see these little slits. Those are just for decoration. They don't really do anything. And then there's a right vent here on the side of the laptop that is actually blocked, and I'll tell you why in just a moment. First, I'm going to talk about the battery life on this laptop. Now, when I first purchased this, it was rated at a battery life of 6 to 7 hours, which was okay for its time, but it was nothing exceptional. This unit is rocking a 43 watt hour battery, and I'm struggling to show you here the time left, but it says 30 minutes and 23% remaining battery life, which means I'm getting a little over 2 hours now after having this laptop for 3 years. That just goes to show you how much the battery has degraded, and this is the original battery. I have not replaced this at all. So this is one of the weakest points of the laptop, I would say. A little over 2 hours of battery life is pretty ridiculous. Okay, so I've shown you a bit of the external parts of this laptop, and you get a sense of what it looks like and how it's built. But how does this laptop ultimately perform nowadays on applications now? Well, I'm about to show you some gaming of Rocket League and some Civilization 5, and here's just a taste of what it does when it loads, how long it takes when it loads the screen. Okay, so right now I'm playing at 720p, and I'm getting about 33 frames per second, which is not bad. All the settings are pretty much at low,
I'll show you here. So here are my current video settings: 720p, high performance settings. None of the heavier graphic stuff here. But watch what happens when I turn it to 1080p, because it's pretty hilarious the performance decrease I get here. Okay, so here is 1080p native, and I'm now getting 14 frames per second. Oh my gosh, I just hit 16. But this is pretty much unplayable. It looks like just an utter lag fest right now. This is just the limitations of the Intel 5500 graphics chip. It can't handle games at all, especially games like this where there's a lot of motion. Okay, so here I've loaded up a game of Civ 5. Here I have a pretty big area. I've loaded quite a bit of units here in terrain. I've built out my farm, so this is a pretty graphically intense situation right now. And I'm currently getting 18 frames per second. It just dropped to 17. So this laptop is definitely suited for like these kind of games where it's like slow, not a lot of motion. The current settings I'm on for video options are I'm playing at 1080p, 2 times anti-aliasing, and a combination of medium high, which is acceptable for a game like this. It looks pretty nice, and like I said, it's smooth. Let me go ahead and hit next turn. Let's see how these automated units perform. So what can this laptop actually do pretty well? Well, like I said, when I was in school, I was doing computer science. I did a lot of programming. So this laptop is really good for programming, mainly because of the screen. The screen, even though it's 1080p, it is IPS, and it's made by Samsung, so it's really high color quality. I don't know the sRGB rating on it. I don't think it's that high, but just in person, it's nice to use, and it's nice to program on. And it's fairly quick for things like programming. I can just go ahead and I have I'm working on a tutorial for Udemy on Angular. It's made by Maximilian Schwarzmuller. He's a really awesome teacher. I would check him out. And I'm just going to start up this app here and show you what this laptop is good at. So if I go here and I go here to this web page, this is what I just launched. So I can begin working on this. And this is started from this program here.
And now for a strange quirk in the screen.
Alright, so the screen is off, and you can see that there's clearly the bezel of the screen right here. And it's pretty thin here. So when you initially look at this screen and you're looking at that corner, you would think that the picture takes up that whole space. But it actually doesn't. It stops right here. There's about a good portion, about the width of my finger, where it stops right at the edge of my finger there. That's where the screen starts. It doesn't start at the edge here. This is just a panel, and this is an edge-to-edge glass. There's actually like a gap there, and you can see a little bit. See that dark place? That's where the screen is. That's where the screen starts. So it deceives you because the screen is much smaller than they make it appear inside the actual housing. And I think that's so weird, because it's just, they could have made it so much smaller. And I think the reason they did this was back when this computer was made, it was first made before Windows 10 came out, and it was made for Windows 8.1. And Windows 8 had that feature where if you swipe to the side, it would do gestures and stuff, or like swipe from the bottom, and the screen needed space to detect your fingers, so that if it's going over that gap right there, it would be a little weird. So instead it starts here, and when you swipe down, it recognizes that it's on the screen and it's registering input.
Okay, so we're nearing the end of the video, I promise. Here's just a quick montage of me opening the system. Needless to say, this laptop is not the easiest to open, and it gets a mark for that as well. It takes a number of screws, and prying off the thing is just, it's terrible. You have to dig your nails under it to get it off. You can see how much I'm struggling here, just in fast motion. Is not that easy.
Okay, so with that off, this is the inside of the unit. And what I have here is that's the Dell 40 watt hour battery. Here is the Samsung SSD drive that I put in. We have dual front firing speakers here. There's one there and one there. And there is the RAM, which is under this little spot here. If you pull this back, you can see that there's 2 RAM modules, and this computer can hold a total of 16 gigs of RAM, which is nice that that's upgradable and it's not soldered on. So here we have the CPU heatsink, and it has a heat pipe directly onto the CPU. So this is the CPU right here. Now, this motherboard is super small. Like, this is all battery, and this is hard drive, and this is the motherboard. Like, all this top part, super tiny motherboard, and there's ventilation here. So you might be wondering, what is this? Well, reading there, it says GPU fan. Now, I told you I'd explain how I got this for $500 when I initially paid $600 for it. Well, that was because when this was being sold with the promotion, Dell said that this came with a Radeon R7 M265 graphics card with 4 gigs of RAM, with video RAM. So I was like, okay, that's what I want. Like, I can pretty much do like more gaming than I would be able to without that on here if I wanted to do that. So I got it, and lo and behold, there was no graphics card installed. So I called them and asked, what was going on, and they said that the graphics card was only reserved for the 4K model of this computer. They made a 4K, a 1080p, and a 768p model of this computer, and only the 4K display got the graphics card. So instead, it's just a big cutout, and I got $100 off because of that little flaw there, the missing graphics card. Alright, that was a look at my 2015 Dell Inspiron 7548. Pretty interesting laptop. I've had it for quite some time, and it's getting to the point where I think I need to replace it soon. Not sure what I'm going to replace it with yet, so if you guys have recommendations, feel free to leave those in the comments. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please give a thumbs up. And if you loved it, please subscribe. Thank you for watching.